My name is Mike Lindahl. I am the factory rep for Antler King. Been working for him now this is my third year. Been in business for 28. You all familiar with Antler King? It's a Wisconsin-based company, started by an animal nutritionist with an emphasis in white-tailed deer and elk. So what you'll find with all of our products, nutritional value is through the roof. If you compare it to anything else on the market, you're going to be very satisfied with what goes into it. Every seed that we've picked for our blends is picked for its high nutritional level in protein, energy, its hardiness. We're a northern company with northern seeds designed to thrive in this environment. They're also going to be very user-friendly. Every mix we have is designed to be successful, as long as you do a couple things that I'll discuss here in a little bit. But before I get into food plots, I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't talk quickly about minerals. It's that time of year when bones are growing, and where legal, there's no better way to give those deer a boost coming off a hard winter or an easy winter than some deer mineral. What you'll find with our Trophy Deer Mineral has been around for 28 years. This is the first product that we invented or brought to market 28 years ago. It's got 27 different major and minor minerals. All of them are designed for bone growth, milk production, immune system health, and disease prevention. So we've got just the right amount of minerals, phosphorus and calcium being the top two. Phosphorus and calcium work together to create antler. In order for those to interact and actually create antler, you need enough vitamin D in a deer's diet. So every mineral in the sequence in the Trophy Deer Mineral is there for a reason. Whether it's the selenium and the copper to help with the immune system and prevent disease, or it's the phosphorus, the calcium for antler growth. On top of that, there's also a yeast culture in the Trophy Deer Mineral. If you know about yeast and a ruminant species, which a deer is, they have to regurgitate their feed, and digestion's always an issue. All the minerals are chelated, and with that yeast culture, they can more easily break down the minerals and actually use them towards antler growth. So I would take a look at Trophy Deer Mineral when you're done. Great way to add some inches. Power Rack is basically Trophy Deer Mineral in a smaller bag. It's got a higher concentration of the trace minerals like selenium, iron, copper, and all the vitamins. It's more of an immune system booster and disease preventer. The way we recommend it is using this on its own would be a good program. The Trophy Deer Mineral by itself would be a better program. Mixing the two together is the best program. So like I said, I know it's a food plot seminar, but I wanted to get that in there. As far as the food plot mixes, we do offer through Mills Fleet Farm 5 mixes, 2 liquids, a fertilizer, a conditioner, and then our Mega Food Plot Starter Pack. First, I want to talk about the importance of food in general. Do you all plant food plots currently? Everybody does? Okay.
Neighbors get a lot of competition with hundreds of acres of corn and beans.
Sure.
Kind of want to put something in that's going to be greened up in the fall, so when it takes this off,
Yep.
you got the spots.
Perfect. And I'm hearing a lot of that. I'm from where I hunt is ag too, so I'm always kind of working to attract deer prior to and after harvest. Because the key to a successful program is food for 12 months. Whether you're a gun hunter, a bow hunter, whatever it may be, we need to kind of think outside the box, not just the 40 days of season or the 10 days of season, but 365 days a year. We did some studies with deer, the effectiveness of food plots. We radio collared deer for 5 years. And what we found is that whether we have 10 acres, 40 acres, or 4,000 acres, if we've got a relied upon food source that they can rely on 12 months out of the year, they're not going to go more than a quarter mile from your property. So that's kind of allowed us to further expand our set to make sure that we offer products that are going to allow you to keep deer on your property 12 months out of the year. Now, the goal is to provide deer food for a year. And what we found through our research is that 5 to 10% of your property needs to be in food in order to do that. How many of you can actually plant 5 to 10% of food in your property? That's impressive. That's good. Most people can't. I can't either. 100 acres, that's 10 acres of food. If you live in ag, you're going to get some help, obviously, with your farmers. That counts. But realize that when they harvest it, you still need to have food there. The way I like to think about it is, I go home tonight, my fridge is empty, I'm going somewhere else to eat. Deer are no different. If they don't have food on your property, they're going to go somewhere else at some point. And that's one more opportunity for your neighbors to shoot them. So just kind of keep that in mind, that 95% of their time is spent within a quarter mile of that preferred food source. That's pretty much all of their time. If you can offer food, water, shelter, and have that preferred year-round food source, you're going to have deer on your property. Now there's no guarantee you're going to harvest a Boone and Crockett whitetail, but the guarantee is that there will be deer frequently, and they'll have nowhere else they'll need to go. Now, of that 5 to 10%, if we can't plant 5 to 10%, anything is better than nothing. As much as you can provide is the best bet, and we'll discuss some ways to try to provide as much as you can with what we have. I'm in the same boat. I can't come close to 5 to 10% of property. I don't own my own property, so I'm at the disposal of the farmer and what he allows me to plant. So we've got some tricks and some tips on ways to maximize what you can plant. I'm going to use 2 acres as an example because it's easy to break in half. So of those 2 acres, my 5 to 10%, I'm going to plant half in a year-round perennial, which is going to be that high protein food source that deer are going to eat spring, summer, and early fall. As fawns develop, as does nurse, as bucks grow antlers, protein is the top of the food chain. That's what they need. Clovers, alfalfa, soybeans, those types of varieties of food to provide high amounts of protein. So half of your program has to be in that high protein food source to keep those deer in your property spring, summer, and fall. Now the other half should be on a more high energy diet, a turnip, a radish, corn if you will, peas, grain soybeans, some rye and some oats, some of those high energy food sources that deer are going to seek as we transition into the rut, mating season, cooler temperatures, when deer need energy. They're going to burn 30% of their body weight in a month, so they need energy in order to build that back up. So if you can offer protein in the spring, summer, and early fall, high energy food sources in the fall and winter, you're going to have deer on your property. Deer have the uncanny ability to know what they need, when they need it, and how to get it. That's why minerals are so important right now, because they need it. And it's the same with food. And what it allows us to do is more easily hunt the deer. I mean, if we're hunting September, good chance you're going to hunt over a soybean field or a clover field or an alfalfa field, because that's what they need that time of year. Transition to a muzzleloader season late in December, you're probably going to find yourself over a cornfield, turnips, radishes, something high in energy. So when you think about whatever property you can manage, whether it's a half acre or 100 acres, try to break it up in that sequence, and that you've got that year-round program. Don't put it all into high energy or all into protein if you want deer year-round. Now I understand that some farmers may provide that protein source all spring and fall with soybeans, so maybe you focus more so on those late season food sources. Pinpoint the weakness in your property. If you've got corn and soybeans from the farmer, they get harvested mid-October, your focus probably should be maybe 60 to 70% in that late season and 30 to 40% in early season. But I would make sure that your program, what you can provide, offers everything they need for a year-round basis. I'm not going to say you won't see deer, you shouldn't hunt over clover after September, because I've done it and I've had success doing it, but they're going to transition more to energy, the sugars of the turnips, the radishes, the corn, as opposed to clover. Now at the same time, gentleman who owns our company, his son shot a mature buck during the day in a clover plot the second day of gun season, November 23rd. So they're still going to utilize it if they can get to it. If it's covered in 2 feet of snow, they're going to focus on energy. So clover is the foundation of your program, just because of all that it offers. It's a perennial food source that keeps coming back year after year. It's high in protein, and it's the first thing to green up in the spring, that time where the farmers don't have anything in the ground. Mother Nature doesn't offer a whole lot as far as protein and nutrition, and clover is the first thing that kind of pops in March and April. So that's always going to be kind of the foundation of that program. Now, like I mentioned, the goal is enough food to keep your deer on the property, but the other benefit to offering food and high protein food like trophy clover and red zone is the potential that you offer those deer as far as antler growth. We did a study on whitetails, 4-year-old whitetails. Fed one group of them 18% protein, one group 8% protein. Over the course of 1 year, at the end of the year, the ones fed 18% protein had 20 more inches of antler growth than the ones fed 8. So you can see the effect of a good program in year 1. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Age, nutrition, and genetics, that's what it takes. It's pure science. Granted, deer are going to grow year after year. They're going to increase in size, but we're talking 20 inches on top of what they would have. So this year, this spring and summer, if the deer on my property don't see 30 to 40 inches of antler growth, I'd be very surprised. Easy winter, coming into the spring with really little stress. I've got one deer that still has an antler. I've never seen that this late in the year because I've given them all the protein and energy they need, all the minerals they need, and really that's what it takes, along with a little luck as far as living long enough to be large. So, any questions with any of that? The 5 to 10% of your property in food, half of it in a high protein perennial, half of it in a high energy food source. Okay, I'm going to break down each product, how they fit into that program, and then I'm going to go through kind of a step-by-step on how to plan a successful food plot, some tips and tricks to avoid failure. Now, when we break it down into the half that's a perennial or a high protein food source, there's kind of 3 mixes that come to mind. Trophy clover on the end there, it's a 6-year perennial. It's going to last 6 years. In that mix, there's 4 varieties of clover, a variety of chicory, and rapeseed. The rapeseed is in year 1 as a cover crop, helps clover during the hot summer, helps them grow roots. With a clover and a perennial plant in year 1, the nutrition first goes to root growth, and after that it goes to forage. So trophy clover is kind of the foundation of our program in that it lasts 5 to 6 years. It's 30% plus protein, 10 tons of forage per acre. It's that food source that can withstand a ton of grazing pressure, keep growing, and provide a lot of high nutrition to those deer when they're growing spring, summer, fall, and really into October, November. No Sweat would be the next one in the line. That's actually a variety of a whole bunch of early and late season food sources. It can be planted in the spring or the fall, just like trophy clover. It's got a clover mix, buckwheat, which is also an early season food source, a couple of varieties of rye, and a rapeseed. So it's got a little bit of everything in there. A couple of the varieties in there are perennials that will come back 2 to 3 years. If you can choose between the two, you're going to go with trophy clover every time just because it's a higher quality mix, higher protein, it's going to last longer. No Sweat, on the other hand, is going to grow anywhere. It needs minimum to no tilling and requires little to no maintenance. So that's kind of the give and take of those two products. I use No Sweat on all my logging roads. I'm able to broadcast that before rain, and it grows. It requires very little shade, there's very little sunlight, and the soil quality doesn't have to be the best. Red Zone would be the next mix that would kind of fall into that. It's not a perennial, but it is a high protein, high forage food source, spring, summer, fall, and winter. I like to plant it in the spring because it's got grain and forage soybeans, grain and forage peas, buckwheat, and sunflower seeds. It was developed because in that one bag you technically have 12 months of food. You've got the forage peas and the forage soybeans for the spring and summer. Ideally they'll work their way through that, leave the grain soybeans and grain peas for later in the year. So you've got the protein in the summer with the forage, the energy in the late fall with that grains, and then you've got buckwheat and sunflower, which buckwheat's a midsummer protein source, and sunflower is a high energy late season source. Transitioning into those fall and winter food sources would be Slam Dunk and Honey Hole. Slam Dunk is a mixture of rape, radishes, forage peas, and buckwheat. Buckwheat and peas, which are going to be more August, September, October food, and you've got the rape and the radishes, which are going to be more cold season food. If you know anything about radishes, once it freezes, all the starch moves into the bulb or the shoot, whatever you want to call it, and it becomes a high sugar and energy source. So once deer get a taste for it, like we discussed earlier, sometimes in year 1 with a radish, they'll eat the top off and they won't touch anything else. Honey Hole is that other late season mix, similar to a radish in that when a turnip freezes, it fills with starch, which is a high sugar source, There is actually more energy in a radish and a turnip than corn. The idea there is when it gets cold, you've got a place to hunt because they're going to be seeking that high energy source that they absolutely need to survive. I'm going to reiterate it, but we want to have them fed for 365 days a year, not just the 5 or 6 days that we're hunting. Get them used to associating your property with food, and you're going to have a pattern that starts to take place. They're going to go to your property for food. If you offer bedding as well, they may never leave your property, and that's the ultimate goal, for you to be successful and for you to have a healthier herd. Every one of these seed mixes has to germinate at 85% or better in order for me to sell it. So the seed's going to perform given the situation is prime for it to perform. So step one in planting food plots is testing your pH. How many of you have tested your pHs on your property? What were they? 6 something, that's pretty good. Yep. Does he apply lime every year?
No, he applied it once in 10 years.
Okay.
About 7.
About perfect then. Excellent. How about you? Close to 7. That's excellent. Testing your pH is going to allow you to a couple things. One, have expectations. pH is going to determine the success of your food plot. Optimum is 7. If your food plots or if pH is a 5, you can expect a lot less unless you're willing to put some lime down. Lime is extremely cheap. Pulverized lime I think was like $12 a ton the other day when I checked. So it's relatively inexpensive. It lasts 8 to 10 years once you get your pH to that level, and it's going to determine the success of your food plot. Fertilizer is a waste of time and money if your pH isn't where it's supposed to be. If your pH is a 4.5, you're going to waste 70% of the fertilizer you apply. So just kind of take that into consideration, and the importance of testing your pH is huge. If you're not willing to apply lime, if your pH is a 5.5, it also offers the ability for you to pick different plants that are going to work in that environment anyways. For instance, trophy clover mix. For that to be successful, for you to get 6 years out of it, for you to get 10 tons of forage per acre, you need a pH above a 6. Now red zone with the soybeans, the peas, and the buckwheat, that's going to grow virtually anywhere. If your pH is a 5, I'm very comfortable saying you can plant that and you're going to be successful. So it allows you expectations of what you can get out of it. It allows you to know, okay, my pH is a 5.5. Maybe I need to apply sandy soil, 8 tons of lime to get to my 7. So testing your pH is the first step and the most important. So they do sell a pH test kit here. I didn't see it, but it's $14. 4 different test plots that you can test. It takes 15 minutes. You can take different samples from around the spot, put them in a solo cup, fill the rest of it with distilled water. Make sure it's distilled water, as pond water, creek water, tap water has a pH. Wait 15 minutes, stick the litmus test in there, and it'll change colors, and it'll tell you what your pH is. There'll be a subsequent chart that you can measure it on, and it'll tell you how much lime to apply. If you're going to use pelletized lime, you can take the amount of pulverized lime you would use and subtract it by a tenth. So instead of 1,000 pounds, you could use 100 pounds. Pelletized lime acts quicker, and it also doesn't last quite as long in the soil. So there's a couple different options. The next step is conditioning your soil and eliminating weeds. In the spring, this is very, very important. If you've all planted in the spring before, you know that weeds tend to grow a little more frequently in the spring. So what I like to do is go in with Roundup. If I can, I'll mix it with Plot Max. Plot Max is a soil conditioner that's going to increase the nutrients in your soil. It's going to add organic matter to your soil. It's actually going to increase your pH. If you're at, say, a 5.8, it'll bring you up to a 6.1, somewhere in there. It's not to be used instead of lime, but it will increase your pH. And in areas with sandy soil, it also aids in water or moisture retention to really help some of those drought-stricken areas. So it's a great tool to help maximize yield. And you can mix it right with your Roundup. Go in, spray it, come back a week later, till it under, and you can do one of two things. You can plant then, or you can wait another week and do the process again. In the spring, anytime you till your soil under, you're going to unearth some weed seeds, and they're going to germinate. So something that you can deal with. A few weeds in your plot's not going to be an issue. I've watched deer graze through weeds just like anything else. So I don't get overly concerned when there's some weeds in my plot. If it's a clover plot, mow it. The best way to maintain a clover plot is to mow it. So step 1, test your pH. Step 2, spray for weeds. Step 3 would be adding the lime to your soil after your pH test. A 7, you're in good shape. You probably don't have to worry about it. But most people, when they test their pH, are going to want to try to apply some lime to get to that 7. When your pH is a 7, you can expect the best, because your pH and soil are going to offer those plants all the nutrients they need. Your fertilizer is going to be 100% utilized. Everything you do is going to be used by the plant. So a 7 is the ideal goal to maximize the amount of food that you can offer. If you're not at a 7, I recommend applying the lime necessary to get there. Realize that when you do apply lime, it's not instantaneous. It takes 3 to 8 months for it to completely change the complexion of the soil. So sometimes what I'll do, I'll test my plot, it's a 5.5. I'll apply my lime, apply my 6 tons to get it to a 7, and then instead of planting like trophy clover, which needs a 6 or better to be successful, I'll put in red zone in year 1. I know red zone's going to grow anyways, and I'll use that in year 1 to allow that pH to rise to a 7, and then in year 2 I'll put in my trophy clover. So testing your pH is so important because you can find ways to be successful even with a poor pH. Step 4 would be fertilizing. I like to fertilize and lime at the same time. Reason being, so I can till them both into the soil. Both of them are going to be a lot more effective if tilled into the soil, especially lime. And fertilizer, it just kind of eliminates one more step if I can do them together. Now, depending on the type or the variety of food you're going to provide, might determine the type of fertilizer I would recommend. Step 5 is tilling. Does everyone have equipment to till? Yeah? That makes this process pretty easy. But what I would recommend is trying to get it at least 6 to 8 inches deep, if you can. It just allows for better root development. For instance, later on, if you plant like a radish or even a clover, or that fall rye you were talking about, tilling that back into the soil after the first year is also going to help naturally fertilize that ground. So tilling is extremely important in many aspects. Then when it comes to seeding your plot, does everybody have ability to cultipack or roll or drag somehow, some way to compress that seed bed? Seed depth is extremely important. Step 6 is seeding your plot. And if there's one thing you take from that step, is being aware of the seed depth. What you'll find is a clover seed, for instance, is going to need to be a little differently prepared than a soybean. Soybean seeds are really quite large. They can be planted deeper, up to 1 inch. Clover seeds are microscopic. They don't even need to be covered. If it's going to rain, the rain will press them down, and that's plenty. If you cover them more than 1/4 inch, there's a good chance they're not going to germinate, or at least press through the soil. They might germinate, but they're not strong enough to actually punch through the soil. So cultipacking, rolling, or getting a drag with some weight on it is a great way to increase your success rate. So I like to till, then I'll cultipack it, broadcast it, and cultipack it. I don't have a drill or a planter. If you've got one of those, fabulous. Great way to manage your seed better and make sure that your depth is exact. Pretty much every one of these seeds can be planted that way. Even red zone, you'll press those soybean seeds into the ground enough with a cultipacker. You could go again over it lightly with a drag to make sure that no seeds are lost to birds or turkeys. Like I said, those are large seeds. They're sitting ducks for a turkey or a crow or anything of that nature. So the most important thing with seeding your plot is that seed depth. Be aware and be certain that you kind of follow those steps importantly. Because like I said, these seeds have to germinate at 85% in order for me to sell them. If they get buried, say you bury a clover seed 2 inches, that plot's just going to sit there and fill with weeds because it's not going to have the ability to punch through the soil. Step 7 would be maintaining your plot. A couple techniques for maintaining. A lot of these, there's not a lot of maintenance you can do other than spray like a foliar fertilizer. We were discussing, you and I don't have 5 to 10% of our property we can put in food. So what I like to do, every month I'll spray Jolt. It's a foliar fertilizer. It works in the stem and the leaves, and it offers food for 1 month. It's virtually going to double the amount of tons in your plot. it's a great way to keep deer on your property longer. Another way to maintain your plot would be, for instance, clover, which we already discussed, mowing that down. No sweat can also be mowed. Those plants are all going to grow back up. As far as the 3 annuals to the right, if you mow those, they will not grow back. So those are kind of plant and let grow, unless you can get after them with a foliar fertilizer or Plot Max. Maintenance is pretty minimal for a hunt plot. Everybody's property has a place that there probably isn't currently food, but there could possibly be food. Maybe you can't get equipment to it, maybe you can. Logging roads, those backwoods plots. I would really consider looking into, I mean, even if it's as small as this area, a spot where you go back there with a backpack sprayer, spray Roundup, kill the existing weeds, come in before rain and broadcast no sweat, broadcast honey hole. Both of those are going to do extremely well in a no-till situation. Another way to offer food for deer, maximize the space you have on your property. It's as simple as seed to soil contact. That's all the seeds need in order to germinate. And for you to create another hunt spot, it's as simple as broadcasting it before rain, and it works just like tilling. The rain's going to push those seeds right down into the soil. If you go in and spray Roundup, what you'll find a week later, those dead weeds kind of act as a mulch. It works pretty effectively, and it's a great way to add more food to your property. Another way to maximize your food plots, if you don't have the amount you need to be able to feed everyone, is it's going to take a little bit more work, but what I found is, for instance, going in the spring, say you've got a ½ acre, plant red zone in the spring. It's going to provide all those protein sources all spring and summer. The deer are probably going to wipe it out completely. Come August 1st, till it under, and go in and plant a slam dunk or a honey hole. It's going to grow extremely fast. Those winter annuals grow really fast. 3 to 4 days, you're going to have germination. In 10 days, they're going to be this tall, and they're just going to keep going. So realistically, with that 1/2 acre plot, if you're willing to put in a little extra work and plant it twice, you can offer in that one plot food for the whole year. So it doesn't necessarily take 5 to 10 to be successful if you're willing to put in a little extra work. The key is food. I know you've got the bedding areas, but you might as well have the deer all the time. Instead of being a pass-through area, you can be the spot. The key for you, for all of us, is to kind of take a step back from where we hunt. Start to understand when we see deer, why we see deer, where we see deer. And then from there we can say, all right, farmer cuts the corn in October, I don't see deer for 3 weeks. So there's my hole, there's my gap. I need to find food from October through December. So I'm going to focus on, realistically, I'm going to focus on probably these 3 products, because they're all going to offer food that isn't available when he cuts his food. So my deer stay on my property year round. That's kind of the goal, to pinpoint the weaknesses and to utilize the space we have to the best of our ability. And that's why we plant food plots. Like I started with, 95% of their time is going to be spent within a quarter mile of that preferred food source. That preferred food source might as well be on your property, making hunting that much more effective.